Welcome to the Defining Moments Black Men series of the Authentic Joe Show. I'm Jolena Johnson, your host, and it is my privilege and pleasure to welcome today's guest, Mr. Flint Fowler. How are you today?
I am doing well. It's so good to be with you, and it's great to see you.
Thank you. It's great to see you too. You're such a busy man, so thank you for making time for us.
Not a problem. Always for you.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little about yourself, your occupation, your background, and how you would describe yourself?
Wow. Let's see here. Well, I'm a native of St. Louis. Stayed here to go to college, so haven't ventured very far from home, in terms of my physical uh, positioning. But I think intellectually and relationship wise, I feel like I've traveled the world, just kind of the connections and relationships that I've had. Graduate of Washington University, I earned a bachelor's degree in psychology and Black Studies, then stayed there for graduate school. There's a guy by the name of Dr. Robert Williams, who's one of the well-known Black psychologists who started a program called Minority Mental Health that was funded by the Department of Mental Health, the U.S. Department of Mental Health, and allowed for the expansion of African American therapists. So those who wanted to go into counseling and things, and this was a special graduate program for that. So I had a chance to do that and earn a master's degree back in the 1981. So I've been around a bit. And then started to working, really wanted to do kind of more prevention, because we know as part of the degree, we had to, put in our work hours, our practicums and things like that. So spent quite a bit of time dealing with speak therapy, or
Mhm.
talking to people and kind of working through issues, and felt that my skills were better geared toward prevention or asset building kind of work. So how do you work with an individual sort of pre-problems or pre-challenges and help situate them for success down the road.
Mhm.
So my first job was with the Boy Scouts because I
Oh.
grew up in scouting, and I worked as what was called a district executive. So I had a territory, much like a salesperson, and my
Mm.
job was to recruit boys and young men for the scouting program, identify volunteers to work with them, and also raise money in order to support those programs. So it gave me a number of skills, all kind of at the same time. And from a psychology standpoint, being involved in structured, organized programs like scouting or like the Boys and Girls Club, who I am now, it gives young people an opportunity to develop interest, to uh, be able to achieve or uh, achieve things, like if you work on merit badges and that kind of thing, or which really represent competencies. So every time you got your cooking merit badge or your camping merit badge or your swimming merit badge, it represented a competence that you could add to your portfolio. And the more competent you are, the more you have this collection of certifications, if you will, then the better you feel about yourself. And the better
Mhm.
you feel about yourself, the more confidence you have to go out and try new things, take risks, because you understand what those risks are and what the payoffs could be. And you do things that are going to help you move ahead. So scouting was a big part of my life as a kid and as a teenager, and then certainly in my first professional job. And it connected me to a lot of people who were in positions of authority and power, if you will, if I can use that terminology
Sure.
in a positive way. So I did that, but I wanted to go back to school, and scouting really didn't allow it. So I started looking around, got another job with St. Louis University with the upward. Actually, I was an employment supervisor first, so I was responsible for non-faculty hiring on the Frost campus, which is the main campus at the university. So anything from being a head of a department or involved in fundraising or involved uh, in hiring, anything associated with admissions or financial aid. I was the person that recruited individuals, interviewed them, and then sent them to departments for screening and selection. And that gave me a chance to interact with people across the campus. So
Mhm.
whether they were in student life or academic support services, or whatever the case may be, I would go learn about their departments, learning about what they were looking for, and my network just got bigger and bigger. And that networking actually led to my next job at St. Louis University, which was the director of the Upward Bound program. Upward Bound
Oh,
is a federally funded experience for high school students, either first generation, potential first generation college graduates, or low income students. The purpose was to help them develop their skills or strengthen their skills in order to make them successful in college. And I had a wonderful time doing that. And it reminded me of my time in scouting because it reconnected me with young people and helping them to navigate, where they like to go professionally. Did that for a number of years, and that job led to a job with the city of St. Louis, a program called Operation Teamwork. And that job led me to Inroads, which is where I met you, an organization focused on careers in business and technology for talented, what we call then minority students. I guess they call them students of color today. So jobs in engineering, marketing, banking, all sorts of things. The best and the brightest that St. Louis had to offer, and connecting them with major corporations and businesses in town who hired them as interns. And then hopefully the goal was to get that company to hire them at the end of graduation. So again, it just got me into corporate doors. It connected me to folks both in educational settings, colleges, universities, local high schools where we went to recruit students, and then just a ton of young people who had their lives in front of them, who were energetic, who were creative and thoughtful, and who wanted to achieve things. They wanted to make a difference in their lives. And so I remember some of the conversations with some of those students and saying, I want to do my own business. I want to I want to make my own money. I want to make my own destiny. And I said, that's great. Go out and learn how to do these things on somebody else's money.
yes.
Learn how a business operates. Learn how to put together a marketing plan or anything that's going to be associated with your business. Learn that and let somebody else pay you till you get to the point where you can get comfortable and get out and do that on your own. So not only was I helping young people, I think, but I also helped myself in that regard. And then ultimately, because of my networking community, someone told me that my name had come up for a job at the Boys and Girls Club, and I should call Dr. Donald Suggs at the American because he was on the board and find out what it was all about. Did that, and that was in 1996. So, it's here.
And your current position is?
I am the president of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater St. Louis. So I've been there about 27, 28 years now. So, and because it connected what I did with Upward Bound, what I did with Inroads, and my association with young people in schools, it kind of brought all those things together and allowed me to start introducing those opportunities to young people even earlier, rather than not getting a chance to do that in high school, like with Upward Bound or Inroads or even college. It gave me a chance to connect with young people as early as elementary school. And so having a wonderful time, opportunity to grow the organization has been there. We went from one site when I got there in 1996. We're about 10 or 12 locations now. Budget was a little bit under $800,000 then. Our budget's about $11 million now. So just, serving roughly 1,000, 1,200 kids back then. I think our numbers are somewhere in the 10,000. So we had the one location in North City. Now we're in North City, we're in North County, and we even have 2 locations in Illinois. So, taking advantage of an opportunity. Whenever someone asked me to get engaged with something, I generally said yes, which can be dangerous, but it
Yes.
also, when you say yes, then people are willing to work with you. And it turns out that they end up helping you probably as much as you help them. So that was a story that I learned. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm just going to say one thing so we can get to your defining moment.
Okay.
But I remember being 17 years old and you were my mentor, counselor, everything. And I remember I had my internship. I was the first intern in the hotel industry. I made $10 less an hour than all the engineers.
Right.
I fell in love over the summer. And then you were like, if you're going to come back, you better get it together, Jolena. Right. And that was the first time that I remember somebody investing in me to tell me, hey, you're messing up. You can still do this. I believe in you. However, you have to believe in you and you have to do the right things and make good decisions. And I'm going to tell you, Inroads was one of the best things that ever happened to me. You being in my life is one of the best things that ever happened to
Wow.
me. And I just want to thank you for that. I had no idea that you started off in psychology and all those things. And that makes a lot of sense now in
Yeah.
terms of your background. And it's actually part of the reasons I wanted to do this series is because oftentimes we don't know what leads to people's success. We don't know what people have gone through. And a lot of times trauma is what pushes us, but some of us are born to serve.
Right.
And for you to talk about, I mean, the results speak for themselves, but just this is my personal experience. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've done for me. And I know what you did to me in a short period of time. So for all the thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of kids who have been affected by your leadership, your grace, your humility, and your hard work over these 40 years. So just thank you.
Thank you. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the interview. If you had to pick a phrase that would be the theme for your life, what would it be?
Wow. Probably grateful. Uh,
Grateful. Okay.
and I would say that just because, you know, I've had plenty of opportunities in front of me, certainly a lot of challenges,
Mhm.
but, again, working closely with others and having them believe in me, just like you said, I believe in you. I've had a chance to grow and prosper, if you will. And I'm grateful for the nurturing that I've received. I'm grateful for the home environment that I had, parents
Mhm.
that really supported me, surrounded by people that really looked out for me, if you will. I
Mhm.
mean, I was not one of those kids who was faced by a lot of danger and that was being pulled in the wrong direction. And I think it's because of the network of people that I had, whether it was being in scouts that was hosted by my church or,
Mhm.
at home and playing with the kids in the neighborhood and always having somebody that neighborhood look out for you. I'm just grateful for the blessings that I have received and the way that I believe God has directed my life. So
All
grateful
right.
would be the term I would use.
Thank you. That is fantastic. Oh, I love it. Okay. So, a defining moment is a point in life when a pivotal decision must be made or when an experience fundamentally changes a person. What defining moment would you be willing to share with us today?
Okay. So this one again, this kind of goes back to Boy Scouts. So I
Okay.
had grew up in scouting, as I mentioned before. Went to school, finished graduate school. I was working part time at Target.
Okay.
There used to be a Target store on Olive Road here in St. Louis, on in University City actually. And I think I was working in the automotive department or cashier or something before all the scanning and things. You actually had to punch in numbers. And had just started my job search, and a guy that was one of the professionals at the Boy Scout office said, "Well, how are you doing? Have you found a job yet?" I said, "No, I'm looking up. I've had somebody offer me some work, but it's not enough money. I may, I've been in graduate school. I think I should be getting this much money, that sort of thing." And he said, "You have to crawl before you can walk."
Mm,
And I said, "That's interesting." And with that thinking, I said, "Well, let me just take the best opportunity I think that's out there for me and not worry about the money."
mm.
And I can tell, I think whenever I've taken a job, I think I've only talked about salary once.
Wow.
And they didn't give me the salary I wanted, so it didn't do any good to have the conversation. But
Hmm.
ever since that time, I've never felt that I was underpaid. I never felt cheated. I've always had enough to do what I wanted to do and live comfortably. So having that mindset really opened me up to take opportunities, to accept jobs that perhaps I would not have accepted before if I had focused only on the money. But that taught me to focus on what impact that I could have, who I can be connected with, and the jobs that reflected my personal values. And
Yes.
so, I think that was a powerful moment. I was, kind of frustrated because I hadn't found that job at the big
Mhm.
corporation or,
Mhm.
making a lot of money. And it actually led me to a career in nonprofit, which
That
has
is
been
fantastic.
rewarding. Yeah.
we need people like you in nonprofit, because there's so many corporate sharks and things like that. So much,
Right.
so much cutthroat activity in other areas. And to have someone like you running an organization, I mean, it speaks for itself. What you've done, your growth and everything has spoken for itself. So as we are going here, what would you say to a young person today, who may be in the job market? Because today, as you said, technology is so much different, and we just
Mhm.
found out about AI and all these
Oh,
different things.
right.
So what are three pieces of advice you would give a young person, maybe even when they're graduating high school? Because
Mhm.
before college, you had to go to college. Now
Right.
they're saying you may not. So what are
Right.
three pieces of advice, especially to a young man, that you would give them today?
Um, Again, kind of take advantage of opportunity. So even though you have all this technology out there, and it'll allow you to kind of take a shortcut to get
Mhm.
to where you want to go, I think it's worthwhile putting in a little extra effort, to take on the hard things to get there. Like we had to learn how to cursive write. People don't do that anymore. They type on a computer. They don't use punctuation, all the stuff that I learned to do. But
Mhm.
because I had to learn to do that, I think it has better prepared me not only to take advantage of technology, but to think even beyond that.
Mhm.
I have a set of personal skills I think that have benefited me
Mhm.
that I would not have if I had taken advantage of all the efficiencies that technology provides for me. So don't be afraid to take a little tougher road to get to where you want to go. I mean, and uh, I'm not saying be intentional about, if there's a way to get somewhere, take that route. I mean, that's why you don't necessarily have to climb over a hill and that sort of thing. But if there are things that, are going to add to your development or strengthen your development, don't be afraid to do that.
Okay.
The other thing I would say is that be I'm gonna kind of combine these things.
Okay.
Um, uh, it pays to be ethical, to
Yes.
do things the right way for the right reason, and
Mhm.
to have a high moral compass, if
Yes.
you will. We see all the things that are taking place in politics today, and people say anything and do anything to grapple for position of what they consider to be power. They, if I could say this, they kind of sell their souls, if you will.
Yes.
And I think, I struggle when I see that, because I know long term it's not gonna be good for anyone. It's not going to be good for them. It's not going to be good for the people that they think they're helping or supporting. And it's like building a house on sand, if
Mhm.
you will. I think it ultimately it's gonna crumble. It's gonna hurt people. So be high level of ethical, high, operate in an ethical manner, and always do the right thing for the right reason. And I think if you put people at the top of that and keep that as your focus, that would help keep you moving in that direction. Then the third thing I would say is raise your hand. If there's an opportunity for you to volunteer, for you
Mhm.
to be involved,
Mhm.
don't be afraid to show up. I just think about like at my church when we first bought vans, and they needed some van drivers. I said, well, I'll drive,
Mhm.
and I'm still doing it today. That was almost 40 years ago. But by doing that, and generally you pick up the older members of the church who
Uh-huh.
maybe the older women whose husbands have passed away, or
Mhm.
our family, and you learn so much about the history of the church and kind of what they had to go through, about how people feel about other people in the church, which can be funny, but it gives you a chance to really connect with people in a meaningful way. And if you see that they're having trouble, it gives you a chance to step in and help out. If
Sure.
you hear them saying things that are not accurate, you
Mhm.
can help correct that, and it ends up, I think, building a stronger sense of community within your own church.
Mhm.
Uh, and it just it's a great way to develop friendships, and that's what church is all about. The fellowship and the love that you experience there. And,
Mhm.
and same thing with the Boy Scouts. It's
Mhm.
good to do a good turn daily, and all that kind of stuff. Helping the old lady across the street with her grocery. It seems corny, but I've
Mhm.
I've raised my hand a lot, and
Mhm.
and I've gotten more back from doing that than I ever put in. So, those are kind of the three things that come to mind.
That is fantastic. I'm so inspired. Oh my
Oh,
goodness. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And do you have any final thoughts before we go?
yeah, I do. I enjoy my job, and I think people should always
Mhm.
have fun at their jobs. Sometimes I might be a little too goofy, and I don't take things as seriously as I should. But I think I was reading a piece of an article the other day, and they said the new thing about CEOs is kindness.
Yes.
To be kind. That you have a history of these companies that drove people to production. You wanted to produce X number of widgets for X number of dollars, and you had to put in the hours, and it was, and sometimes you had to push and grind in order to get that. But you know how people talk about you can draw more, you know, bees with
Sugar.
honey,
Yeah.
sugar, yeah, bees
Sugar
with
than
honey
salt.
or something. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's true, but I think historically people have been afraid because they look at kindness as a weakness. So if you're kind, that means you don't have the backbone to run this corporation.
Mhm.
But I've heard about stories of people like Des Lee, and who's a longtime philanthropist in St. Louis, and others who operated from a base of kindness, and their employees were much happier. And again, it kind of goes back to doing the right thing for people. When you put them first, your company is going to be successful, it's going to be profitable, and people are going to want to work for you. And then they end up being kind to other people as well. So it creates the kind of world I think we all want to live in.
I have so much I can say about that. I want to thank you for that. And I
Sure.
hope people are listening. I hope people who work for companies are listening. And I hope leaders who work for companies are listening to what you said. Because so many times it's all about the grind, it's all about the bottom line. People feel underappreciated, they're undercompensated, they're overstressed. And I went to a workshop a few months ago, and they were talking about the number of people who are having mental health issues in
Hmm.
the workplace these days. And it's like 60% of people are in the red zone when it comes to stress in their lives. And so you never know how a person is going to behave. And I would say, not only put yourself in their position, but try to not only be tolerant, but be empathetic when you make decisions.
Yeah.
And then it might actually work out.
Right.
So I know some people who I would love to just hear this message. So I hope they're listening.
Be careful what you ask for.
Exactly. Well, Flint, I want to thank you so much once again for being here today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your life's work. And thank you for continuing to do the work.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.